Hello everyone!
Welcome to episode 25 of Talk to the Chip.
25 already. Brilliant.
We're going to now talk about music on a long thin wire
by the fantastic American composer Alvin Lucier.
Yeah, we wouldn't skip Alvin Lucier, obviously. We've been looking forward to talking about his work. Most of the people I meet, when I talk to them about electronic music, tell me that they know about I Am Sitting in a Room.
Yes, I Am Sitting in a Room is kind of not just Alvin Lucier's most famous piece, but one of the most famous pieces in the kind of electronic music canon in a way, because it's so important conceptually.
Yeah, I think it is related to the emergence of sound arts.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, it's interesting that Lucier is described as a sound artist as much as he's described as a composer.
Yeah, I think it's also related to the revolutionary experimental ideas he came up with, which led to the installations, sound installations that he built. And this is also related to that, what we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. So this piece, Music on a Long Thin Wire, is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it is one of my favourite things. And it's about an hour long and it's in 4 sections.
Yeah, it has 4 parts. It was first conceived in 1977.
Yeah. And
it is also very drone-y. And the sound is endlessly going on through sine wave oscillators.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's probably worth describing what's actually going on here. And this is in Lucier's own words.
Oh, yeah.
Music on a long thin wire is constructed as follows. The wire is extended across a large room, clamped to tables at both ends. So it's really, really long thing, and of course it's piano wire that he used. So it's so it takes an electric charge. It's steel.
Mm-hmm.
The ends of the wire are connected to the loudspeaker terminals of a power amplifier placed under one of the tables. A sine wave oscillator is connected to the amplifier. A magnet straddles the wire at one end, so it's a horseshoe magnet. Wooden bridges are inserted under the wire at both ends, to which contact microphones are embedded, routed to a stereo sound system. The microphones pick up the vibrations that the wire imparts to the bridges and are sent through the playback system. By varying the frequency and loudness of the oscillator, a rich variety of slides, frequency shifts, audible beats and other sonic phenomena may be produced.
Yeah.
So it's basically he's using a wire under tension, a free moving wire under tension, like the Pythagorean idea of a monochord. So it's literally created a monochord.
Yeah.
But what's vibrating the monochord is not plucking it, but is using the vibration of the alternating current going through it in a magnetic field to vibrate the string, vibrate the wire.
So we can see here how extended his investigations are into the physics of sound and the sonic possibilities to explore in natural processes.
But that's the thing I thought was really interesting in his bit of text about the piece was he wrote, when Don Funes, I don't know who Don Funes is, asked me to make a work for his live electronic music ensemble in Potsdam, New York. I didn't know there was a Potsdam in New York. I thought Potsdam was in Berlin. But anyway, I invited his players to feed their synthesizer signals into the wire. I was not happy with any of these performances, however. Mm-hmm. The music never went beyond a kind of poetic improvisation.
Yeah.
I finally decided to remove my hand from the musical process, and I think that one sentence is really, really important. That says so much about him and so much about why this piece is so good.
Yeah.
He removed his hand from the musical process.
Yeah, exactly. It is in a way how it works is to leave the setup alone.
Yeah.
Then I think one can argue that it's generative on its own right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the involvement of a composer or a performer now is in a different way than the traditional, typical ways.
Yeah.
And then there is a sculptural approach, which then takes us to calling it an installation, a sound art installation. That's why I think one of the reasons he's referred to as a sound artist. It's this sort of a thing. Although he also is mentioned to have admitted that the whole concept could have also worked with a shorter wire because the using a long wire was more for sculpturing purposes. Then this also suggests maybe there's Gesamtkunstwerk, the kind of an approach where we see an intersection of various artistic practices and areas, and we are talking about again the space and acoustics, use of the space, use of the acoustics, or the acoustics of the instruments. In this case, this is the installation, because when we think about I Am Sitting in a Room, obviously this is where he explores the physics and the acoustics of the room.
Yeah.
And here also this is in a way part of a sculpture work, an installation. There's the appearance, there is the exploration of physics and investigations, and then it sounds the best apparently when you leave the setup alone.
There's another visual aspect to it, is that because it's such a long wire, that, you know, of course, the longer it is, the lower the frequencies you get out of it.
Yeah, all the resonances.
And you can actually see the wire physically moving. You know, it's so long that you can see it moving backwards and forwards, and you can see it vibrating, and you can see vibrations moving longitudinally along the wire backwards and forwards. So that's also a really visual part of it. But I mean, another aspect which Lucier himself was surprised about was how much, you know, that nothing really changes. That you set up the one frequency at one level that goes into the wire as an AC current, so it moves backwards and forwards. It stays that frequency, and yet so much change happens over time.
Yeah.
And he was amazed how tiny fluctuations in temperature, whether there were other people in the room, all these tiny things produced musical changes in the pitch or changes in the overtones of the harmonic series of the string.
Yeah.
So actually, in a way, everybody who comes into the room, the shape of the room itself, the temperature, the time of day, are all performers in this piece.
Yes.
You know,
not only just people who are listening to it, because our bodies affect the acoustics.
absolutely. And again, like the temperature and all sorts of different aspects. It's also really interesting that there's references to the Pythagorean monochord here, you know, which was used to demonstrate or to understand the harmonic series.
Yeah.
And so the string itself, you know, vibrates, resonates with the harmonic series. But then when you put another frequency into it, which is not one of the tones of the harmonic series, that's when you get these very, very complex spectral effects happening, which are really the very, very exciting aspect of this piece.
Yeah, and another thing is it's like a piece that's been shaped and finalized over time for that reason.
Yeah.
Which also Alvin Lucier he shared his own observations in the 90s about this. One of the things he says, he was initially not super happy with how it sounded. But then also in a gallery space he imagined it would be sounding better. So this was played together with David Rosenbaum
Yes.
in Canada, in Toronto. And I'm not sure about which year these were happening. So this is...
Probably 77, yeah.
This is a composer and it's American experimental music artist, David Rosenbaum. Then that was exactly where you were talking about Potsdam in New York, because he had a live electronic music ensemble. Then Alvin Lucier invites these performers for each of them to feed their synthesizers, oscillators, signals to the wire. But yeah, he was initially not very happy with the performers. However, then it's basically it was like improvisation. So the results of improvisation can be surprising. But then this is also an experience where you learn. So after this, he finds out, like, you know, when you don't make like these massive, enormous changes, interactions with it, then it's when it sounds the best. As a result, that's what I understood from his notes.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about leaving a drone to very slowly change over time and to have an interaction with, you know, the physicality of a vibrating string or any vibrating surface, is that it has this link to other musical cultures, particularly Buddhist culture and Tibetan culture.
Yeah.
And again, there's this droning relationship with Eliane Radig's work.
Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, researching through the harmonic series and slightly enharmonic tones within the harmonic series. And there's a very, very strong sense of that you know, if you come up with a very technical idea, put it into place, it's still, because you're delving into the nature of sound and the physics of reality of nature, that it brings out all these kind of almost spiritual qualities.
So there are spiritual qualities and cultural aspects, as you mentioned. Like there are various parameters that influence how this piece sounds.
Yeah.
And here is another example from Alvin Lucier's notes. This is in Kyoto. Then this is in a dance studio in Kyoto. So visitors' footsteps were causing extremely slight shifts in the position of the tables, Lucier writes in 1992. And as a result, it was changing big, spectacular changes in the sounds of the wire. Yeah. And then also, this is another report from a musicologist called Shin Nakagawa. We will leave it to you, the pronunciation of Japanese. So this is a Japanese musicologist, Shin Nakagawa. He was the person who organized Lucier's visits in there. So this musicologist spent the night under the wire. And he said that even without any movement, the room would mysteriously, in quotation marks, erupt into triadic harmonies.
Oh wow.
In each of these examples, which we will link in our podcast, you can see notes. In Alvin Lucier's notes, you can see how different interactions resulted in different ways. But what I understand is when you compare the New York installation, which involved 6 performers who were using synthesizers, versus the one in Japan, which involved no movements plus some dancey moments, you can see that the wire functions best when you don't interact much with it. You just let it do the music, let it generate the music with its own physical acoustic algorithms.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's interesting that the 4 recordings, the 4 sort of 20 minutes recordings that are collected here on this in this release, how different they are.
Yeah,
you know, it's exactly the same gear, the same concept. It's the same wire, the same length as wire, All that's changed is there's a different initial frequency from the sine wave generator in each of the four of them, and
very minimal. Also.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we can say very minimal. Also, we can say, mention Lucier, where he comes from San Francisco State Music Center, together with his minimalist fellows.
Yes.
Like Terry Riley.
Yeah. And even Steve Reich was involved there. Pauline Oliveros.
Yeah.
A lot of important people came from the San Francisco Tape Center.
Yeah, to talk about the San Francisco composers, actually, Alvin Lucier was one of the founding members of the Sonic Arts Union, which was a group of experimental musicians, and they were active from 1966 to 1976, which also included Gordon Mama, and also they did get. Their first reference was the collaborations of John Cage and David Tudor.
Well, it's interesting that John Cage's name comes up there because, of course, there is something very Cagean about music on a long thin wire. The idea of setting something up and letting nature take its course. The idea of setting something up that is so sensitive to the environment that the environment starts to be the creative force in the music. Which is very similar to, Cage's silent masterpiece.
Well, yes, this is like revolutionary ideas of Cage. And also another thing to note is instrument building, which we can then we can refer to Hugh Locane also that we talked about in one of our earlier episodes, because this union had this sort of approach where they were exploring non-conventional elements in a very DIY spirit.
Yeah.
So this is one of the first groups in electronic music history that is recognized to use the phrase sonic arts, sound arts.
Ah, right, that's
also.
Interesting. So yes, that's making a clear kind of line. Clear line in the sound. Yeah. I mean, there's also a thing about mentioned minimalism. I mean, not in the sense of Terry Riley, Steve Reich, American minimalist composers, but in the sense of really reducing things down. Minimalism in the sense more of Yves Klein, where you just go down to one color. The long thin wire is piano wire.
Yeah.
So in a way, this piece, he's taken a piano and reduced it down to just one wire.
Very limited minimal.
And he's not even hitting the wire with a hammer. He's not even touching it. He's vibrating it with an electrical alternating current.
Yeah.
So it's super reduction thing, and taking away so much of what we considered up and the 19th century idea of music, which was so much about changes of pitch as being the only thing of any importance in music. It's much more about change of sound within a single pitch.
Yeah, it is. I think also very much making the most of limitations, but that limitation might be actually a grand idea also.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's reducing down to one idea, but it's one idea that is really huge and kind of all-encompassing in a way.
Yeah. I think for people who listen to this, it would be worth exploring other works of Alvin Lucier. We lost him not long ago into 2021, but he lived long enough to give more like a recent interviews about the processes he was involved. There is the cultural aspect, there is the pioneering live electronic music aspect. Live electronics concerts, performances were being practiced by the likes of Cage or Stockhausen in mixed media environments involving acoustic instruments and electronics. Or we did also witness fixed media performances with the likes of Varese and Xenakis designing the Philips Pavilion. But this is improvisation, DIY live electronic music.
But there's another thing here is that Lucier's work You mentioned like Stockhausen, Varese. These were composers that came very much from the classical music establishment, where the organisation of pitches was at the heart of music. Lucier, his work seems to come more from a visual arts and conceptual arts background.
That's very important, actually.
Yeah.
And that's why it takes me to the term Gesamtkunstwerk.
Yeah.
In a way, which we can say for also Xenakis.
Yes,
yeah. Then the next level part of the works involves his exploration of the brain cells world, which I did not delve into.
Yeah.
But like his legacy still goes on in a way. It's still being discussed because the kind of designs and works it does have the nature of being continuous, including this artificial brain work, which I would we will add to in our notes and links as an additional reading for music on a long thing wire. My discovery of this piece was when I was delving into early electronic music, which involved drones, ambient sounds, as opposed to music concrete and electronic music works that involved more of specialized short bits of sounds. Also, I wanted to explore like droney things, and that's when I discovered Eliane Rodriguez's work also. So, and I designed my very own playlist, which I called the Mind Journey, and that's when I got suggested, when I encountered, I did know about Alvin Lucier's work, but that's when I discovered this work, because it did have that sort of droney meditative aspect.
Yes.
So in my search of trying to find early electronic music pieces that involved this sort of an approach, that's how I found out about it. Like, it has that sort of captivating nature, the resulting sounds. We're talking about a lot of efforts and investigations into physics or like the visual and sculpture work. You mentioned that he was a visual and sculpture artist in a way. But this is and the result is beautiful vibration.
It is a really beautiful thing. I mean, the four pieces, they're very different. They're very beautiful, and what makes them so beautiful really is the fact that it's really delving into the nature, the physics of sound itself, and that makes it very very meditative, very natural. Sometimes there's some big dissonances going on.
Yeah, that's also like a dark ambient kind of ethereal, almost like the dissonant chords are being generated.
Well, you can hear that, particularly in the second section. You can hear that the sine wave, the oscillator that's producing the movement in the string, is just slightly out from one of the major harmonics of the string, so that there's this constant beating going on, the beating of going in and out of phase between the two frequencies that are very close to each other. That's a very, very important natural process. I mean, that's how piano tuners work, and it's a big part of how we all tune our instruments. It's a big part of particularly of Eliane Rodriguez's music, and also there was I felt a strong reference to Eliane Rodriguez's Occam pieces, because
they are acoustic more recently,
But there was I saw the Welsh harpist Rodri Davis play a couple of weeks ago, and a number of the pieces, particularly the Eliane Rodriguez piece that he played, he was just playing one string on the harp, and it's the same idea that we have here. It's one string being resonated, and yet within that one string there is this multiplicity of different tones and tones that some are in tune with each other, some are out of tune and beat against each other. And that's what he's really investigating with this piece. And it's fascinating and very, very beautiful.
Results are very surprising and amazing.
Good. Well, we can only recommend that you go and listen to Music on a Long Thin Wire and enjoy, everyone. Yeah,
enjoy. We can hope that it can be maybe recreated in some places as an installation. I know that I am sitting in a room is being explored in many ways.
Yeah.
This would be another thing to explore. Okay, thank you for listening.
And see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.